Ellen Greenberg was a vibrant 27-year-old first-grade teacher, beloved by her students and admired by her peers. But in January 2011, her promising life was cut tragically short in the most baffling of circumstances. Ellen was found dead in her Philadelphia apartment with 20 stab wounds, including 10 to the back of her head and neck. Initially, this gruesome scene was treated as a homicide, a logical conclusion given the nature and number of wounds. However, in a shocking turn of events, the death was later ruled a suicide. This decision has left everyone from forensic experts to true crime aficionados scratching their heads. How could someone inflict such extensive injuries upon themselves? What drove the authorities to reclassify such a seemingly clear-cut case of foul play as a suicide? These questions have haunted Ellen's family and the public for over a decade. To understand the gravity of this case, we need to delve into the initial findings and the disturbing elements that have fueled endless speculation. On that fateful day, Ellen was discovered by her fiancé, Sam Goldberg, who had returned home to find the door locked from the inside. After forcing his way in, he was met with a sight straight out of a nightmare: Ellen lying lifeless on the kitchen floor, a knife protruding from her chest. The paramedics arrived swiftly, but it was already too late. The scene was chaotic, with blood spatter indicating a violent struggle. Yet there were no signs of forced entry, and the apartment was undisturbed, suggesting that Ellen's assailant, if there was one, hadn't come from outside. As investigators combed through the evidence, the initial theory of homicide seemed incontrovertible. But as the investigation unfolded, the narrative took an unexpected and controversial twist. In this video, we'll unravel the perplexing details of Ellen Greenberg's death, examining the forensic evidence, the controversial reclassification, and the relentless pursuit of justice by her family. Could it really be possible for someone to stab themselves 20 times, particularly in the back of the head and neck? What inconsistencies exist in the forensic analysis? And why was the case closed so abruptly, leaving so many questions unanswered? Stay tuned as we dive deep into one of the most mysterious and contentious cases of the 21st century. When Ellen Greenberg's fiancé, Sam Goldberg, returned to their apartment on January 26, 2011, he found the door locked from the inside. After repeated attempts to get Ellen to answer and growing increasingly worried, he forced his way in, only to be confronted with an unimaginable horror. Ellen was lying on the kitchen floor, a knife lodged in her chest, surrounded by a pool of blood. The scene was eerily quiet, with no signs of a struggle or forced entry, adding to the immediate confusion and dread. The paramedics arrived swiftly after Sam's frantic 911 call, but it was already too late. Ellen was pronounced dead at the scene. The initial investigation began with a meticulous examination of the apartment. Detectives noted the lack of defensive wounds on Ellen's hands and arms, which are typically present in cases of violent assault. However, the sheer number and location of the stab wounds raised immediate red flags. How could such a brutal attack be self-inflicted? First responders and investigators observed that the apartment showed no signs of forced entry or robbery. Nothing was missing, and there were no indications of a struggle that might suggest an intruder. The scene seemed almost staged in its tranquility, save for the macabre sight of Ellen's body and the blood around her. Statements from authorities began to shape the narrative. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey initially described the case as unusual, given the apparent contradictions in the evidence. Homicide detectives treated the scene with the gravity it warranted, preserving evidence and documenting every detail. However, the subsequent autopsy report only deepened the mystery. The medical examiner found 20 stab wounds on Ellen's body, including 10 to the back of her head and neck. The knife still embedded in her chest punctured her heart, a wound that would have been immediately incapacitating, raising further doubts about the possibility of suicide. Despite these troubling details, initial reports began to circulate that there were no defensive wounds or signs of a struggle, leading some to speculate about Ellen's state of mind prior to her death. The absence of any obvious signs of an intruder or struggle in the apartment added to the growing complexity of the case. Neighbors reported no unusual sounds or disturbances, and the building's security footage showed no suspicious activity around the time of Ellen's death. As investigators delved deeper, they faced mounting pressure to explain the inexplicable. Was this a case of a meticulously planned and executed murder made to look like a suicide, or was it an extraordinarily rare and bizarre instance of self-inflicted violence? The scene of Ellen Greenberg's death was just the beginning of a convoluted and controversial investigation that continues to baffle and divide experts and the public alike. The forensic analysis of Ellen Greenberg's death is both fascinating and deeply perplexing, primarily due to the nature and number of stab wounds found on her body. Ellen sustained 20 stab wounds, a staggering number that included 10 to the back of her head and neck. Such injuries naturally raise serious questions about the feasibility of self-infliction, leading to a contentious debate among forensic experts. The initial autopsy conducted by the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office revealed the gruesome details. Ellen had stab wounds to her chest, abdomen, and back, with some wounds penetrating deeply into her heart and major organs. The knife found embedded in her chest had pierced her heart, a wound that would typically be fatal almost immediately. The most puzzling aspect was the 10 stab wounds to the back of her head and neck, which are exceedingly rare in suicides and often suggest an attack by another party. Forensic pathologists noted that some of the wounds had penetrated through muscle and bone, which would have required significant force. This level of force further complicates the suicide theory, as it seems implausible for someone to inflict such damage upon themselves, especially in the back of the head and neck. Additionally, the absence of hesitation wounds, shallow cuts often seen in self-inflicted injuries, contradicts the suicide ruling and points towards a possible homicide. However, the case for suicide was built on the lack of defensive wounds and the locked apartment door. Typically, defensive wounds are present on the hands and arms of victims who try to fend off an attacker. Ellen's lack of such injuries suggested to some that she did not defend herself, potentially supporting the notion of a suicide. Furthermore, the locked door from the inside added another layer of mystery, as it implied that no one else could have entered or left the apartment after the incident. Expert opinions have been divided on this case. Some forensic experts argue that the position and nature of the wounds, particularly those on the back of Ellen's neck and head, are almost impossible to self-inflict. Dr. Cyril Wecht, a renowned forensic pathologist, has publicly criticized the suicide ruling, stating that the injuries Ellen sustained are inconsistent with self-harm. Dr. Wecht emphasized that the depth and location of the stab wounds, especially those requiring significant force, suggest an external assailant rather than a self-inflicted injury. On the other hand, Dr. Marlon Osborne, the pathologist who conducted the autopsy, stood by the suicide ruling, citing the lack of defensive wounds and the possibility of a psychological breakdown leading to such extreme self-harm. This perspective, however, has been met with skepticism from both the public and other forensic professionals who find the explanation insufficient given the physical evidence. Further complicating the forensic landscape are anomalies in the investigation process itself. Key pieces of evidence, such as the knife's trajectory and the exact positions of the wounds, were not thoroughly documented or analyzed in a manner that satisfied all parties involved. The family's independent autopsy report highlighted discrepancies in the original findings, including overlooked bruises on Ellen's body that suggested a struggle. These forensic anomalies have led to continued calls for re-examination of the case. The family has enlisted multiple forensic experts to review the evidence, all of whom have expressed doubts about the suicide conclusion. The inconsistencies in the forensic analysis and the controversies surrounding the official ruling underscore the need for a more transparent and comprehensive investigation. In conclusion, the forensic evidence in Ellen Greenberg's case is a complex puzzle with pieces that seem to fit multiple narratives. The 20 stab wounds, particularly those to the back of the head and neck, challenge the plausibility of suicide. Expert opinions and forensic anomalies only add to the intrigue and confusion, leaving many to wonder whether justice has truly been served in this tragic and mysterious case. The reclassification of Ellen Greenberg's death from homicide to suicide is one of the most controversial aspects of the case, sparking outrage and disbelief among the public and her family. The timeline of this reclassification is crucial to understanding the complexities and perceived mishandlings of the investigation. Initially, when Ellen was discovered with 20 stab wounds, the scene was treated as a homicide. The Philadelphia Police Department began an investigation, operating under the assumption that Ellen had been murdered. This initial classification aligned with the common sense interpretation of the crime scene. A young woman found with multiple stab wounds, including severe injuries to her back and neck, seemed unlikely to have self-inflicted such harm. However, just a few weeks into the investigation, the case took a dramatic turn. On February 18, 2011, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, led by Dr. Marlon Osborne, reclassified Ellen's death from homicide to suicide. This decision was reportedly based on several factors: the lack of defensive wounds on Ellen's hands and arms, the absence of signs of forced entry, and the locked apartment door, which suggested that no one else had entered or exited around the time of her death. Authorities argued that the scene did not fit the typical profile of a homicide. They suggested that Ellen might have suffered a psychological breakdown, leading her to inflict the stab wounds on herself. The toxicology report, which showed no significant levels of drugs or alcohol, did little to clarify the situation, but did not support any theory of incapacitation or altered mental state due to substances. The reclassification was met with immediate and vehement opposition from Ellen's family. They found the idea that she could have committed suicide in such a violent manner to be inconceivable. Ellen's parents, Joshua and Sandy Greenberg, began a tireless campaign to have the case re-examined, hiring independent forensic experts and appealing to public officials for support. The family's determination has kept the case in the public eye, fueling ongoing media coverage and public interest. Public reaction to the reclassification has been overwhelmingly skeptical. True crime enthusiasts, forensic experts, and the general public have all expressed doubt about the suicide ruling. Social media has played a significant role in maintaining pressure on the authorities, with numerous campaigns and petitions calling for justice for Ellen Greenberg. Hashtags like #JusticeForEllen and #ReopenTheCase have trended, reflecting widespread discontent with the official explanation. The controversy surrounding the reclassification has also prompted questions about the integrity of the investigation. Critics argue that crucial evidence may have been overlooked or misinterpreted, and some have suggested potential conflicts of interest or undue influence within the medical examiner's office. The family's persistence has led to multiple reviews of the case, but the official ruling remains unchanged, leaving a cloud of suspicion and unresolved questions. In summary, the reclassification of Ellen Greenberg's death from homicide to suicide is a deeply contentious decision that has sparked significant public outcry and a relentless pursuit of justice by her family. The reasons provided by authorities have not satisfied the growing demand for a transparent and thorough investigation, leaving many to wonder if the truth about Ellen's death will ever be fully uncovered. The battle to reopen the investigation into Ellen Greenberg's death has been a prolonged and arduous journey for her family. From the moment the case was controversially reclassified as a suicide, Ellen's parents, Joshua and Sandy Greenberg, have fought tirelessly to seek justice for their daughter. Their legal efforts have spanned over a decade, involving numerous court battles and significant media attention. The Greenbergs' legal crusade began shortly after the reclassification in 2011. Believing that the evidence overwhelmingly indicated homicide, they sought independent forensic experts to review the case. These experts, including renowned forensic pathologist Dr. Cyril Wecht, have consistently criticized the suicide ruling, citing the implausibility of self-inflicting such severe injuries. With this expert backing, the family pursued legal avenues to challenge the official findings. One of the significant legal milestones occurred in 2017 when the Greenbergs filed a lawsuit against the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, demanding a change in the manner of death on Ellen's death certificate from suicide to homicide or undetermined. The lawsuit argued that the medical examiner's decision was arbitrary, capricious, and unsupported by evidence. However, the court dismissed the case, ruling that the medical examiner had the authority to determine the manner of death and that the family had not provided sufficient evidence to overturn the decision. Undeterred, the Greenbergs continued their legal fight. In 2019, they sought the intervention of the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office, requesting a fresh investigation into Ellen's death. The Attorney General's office agreed to review the case, marking a significant victory for the family. However, this review has yet to result in a reclassification or any new legal actions, leaving the case's status unchanged. Throughout this process, media coverage has played a crucial role in keeping Ellen's case in the public eye. National and local news outlets have reported extensively on the family's quest for justice, highlighting the inconsistencies in the forensic evidence and the controversial nature of the suicide ruling. True crime podcasts and YouTube channels have also delved into the case, amplifying public interest and support for the Greenbergs' cause. Public opinion has largely sided with the Greenbergs, with many questioning the validity of the suicide ruling and expressing outrage over the perceived lack of thoroughness in the investigation. Social media campaigns, including hashtags like #JusticeForlan and #ReopenTheCase, have garnered widespread attention, drawing support from both the true crime community and the general public. Petitions calling for a reinvestigation have amassed thousands of signatures, further demonstrating the strong public sentiment surrounding the case. Despite these efforts, key court battles have often ended in disappointment for the Greenbergs. In 2021, the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas dismissed another lawsuit filed by the family, which sought to compel the Philadelphia Medical Examiner to reconsider the ruling. The court maintained that the medical examiner's decision was final and not subject to judicial review. Nevertheless, the Greenbergs have remained resolute. They continue to push for legislative changes that would allow families in similar situations to have more influence over death investigations. Their advocacy has led to increased scrutiny of the procedures and policies within medical examiner offices, potentially paving the way for future reforms. The ongoing legal and investigative battles in Ellen Greenberg's case underscore a broader issue within the criminal justice system: the difficulty families face in challenging official determinations and seeking transparency. While the Greenbergs have not yet achieved their ultimate goal of reclassifying Ellen's death, their relentless pursuit has shone a spotlight on the case, ensuring that Ellen's story remains a topic of public and legal discourse. In conclusion, the legal efforts to reopen Ellen Greenberg's case have been marked by significant challenges and setbacks, but also by unwavering determination and widespread public support. The Greenbergs' fight for justice continues to inspire many and serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of perseverance in the face of institutional adversity. The case of Ellen Greenberg has captured the public's attention and sparked significant outrage, largely due to the powerful role of social media and public campaigns. From the moment the controversial suicide ruling was announced, true crime enthusiasts and concerned citizens alike have taken to platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit to voice their disbelief and demand justice. Hashtags such as #JusticeForlan and #ReopenTheCase have trended, helping to keep Ellen's story in the public eye and maintain pressure on authorities. Notable figures and organizations have also joined the call for a reinvestigation. High-profile forensic experts like Dr. Cyril Wecht have openly criticized the suicide ruling, lending credibility to the family's claims and amplifying media coverage. True crime podcasts and YouTube channels, which have large and dedicated followings, have produced in-depth episodes dissecting the case, further fueling public interest and outrage. The impact of these campaigns has been profound, extending beyond social media. Community members have organized rallies and events to show their support for the Greenberg family, demonstrating a collective desire for transparency and justice. These efforts have not only kept Ellen's case in the spotlight, but have also highlighted broader issues within the criminal justice system, particularly regarding the handling of suspicious deaths and the challenges families face in challenging official rulings. For the wider true crime audience, Ellen Greenberg's story is a compelling mix of mystery, forensic intrigue, and legal drama. It has become a case study in how public pressure and media scrutiny can influence the pursuit of justice. The ongoing debate over the evidence and the push for a reclassification continue to engage and mobilize the true crime community, drawing attention to the importance of thorough and unbiased investigations. Ellen Greenberg's death remains one of the most perplexing and controversial cases in recent memory. With 20 stab wounds, including 10 to the back of her head and neck, the ruling of suicide has been met with widespread skepticism. The tireless efforts of her family, the scrutiny of forensic experts, and the support of the public have kept this case alive in the media and in the hearts of many. As we've explored, the forensic evidence presents numerous contradictions, and the legal battles underscore the difficulty of challenging official conclusions. The public's continued interest and outrage highlight a collective demand for answers and justice. If you found Ellen's story as compelling and mysterious as we do, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more in-depth true crime investigations. Together, we can keep the conversation going and ensure that cases like Ellen's are not forgotten.